Hi, I'm Amy, and this is one of my best friends and travel buddy, Edie. Even though we live over 4,000 miles apart, we have managed to travel together every year since we were 13. Except, well, that one year.
We will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
As we've grown, so has our travel group, and our husbands Logan and Gareth now join us on our adventures. This year, we decided to visit Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. We planned the whole trip, but nature had other plans, which changed our itinerary just a little bit. Amazingly, this turned out to be one of our most successful travels yet, and we are thankful to have had the opportunity to visit 3 national parks in only 1 week. Here is a summary of our latest adventure. We started our trip in Bozeman, Montana. Logan and I flew into Bozeman Airport, arriving past midnight the night before. We picked up our rental car and stayed the night in a hostel that took care of the bed and shower that we needed. In the morning, after securing our Going to the Sun Road reservations online, we walked around downtown Bozeman, admiring the rows of shops selling athletic gear
Big summer blowout.
and lots of coffee. In the late morning, we picked Edie and Gareth up from the Bozeman Airport and started our 5-hour drive to the Glacier area. After stopping at Walmart in Kalispell for groceries and essentials, we completed our journey and made it to our Airbnb in Whitefish, just 30 minutes outside of the Glacier National Park entrance. We got into Glacier National Park just after 8 a.m. on Sunday and started on our first hike, Avalanche Lake via the Trail of Cedars. The hike was beautiful, shady, mostly flat, and 5.6 miles out and back. Our turnaround point was Avalanche Lake, a beautiful, peaceful, and picturesque lake nestled under the mountains. Immediately after the Avalanche hike, we boarded the free shuttle which took us to the Logan Pass Parking and Visitor Center. The shuttle took us up Going to the Sun Road, and we were pleased to let the professional take us on our first trip up this high, winding mountainside road. After a quick snack break at Logan Pass, we headed out on our second hike of the day, to Hidden Lake. The trail was described as a moderate difficulty level and was 2.9 miles out and back, with amazing 360-degree views all the way up. stairs were quite steep and still partly covered in snow, which made for more difficult but fun hiking. We enjoyed seeing the mountain goats lying around on the side of the trail and enjoying the sunny day. The Hidden Lake lookout point was small and crowded, but we found a rock to sit on to eat our lunch and take in the views. On the way back down, it was hard work not to slip on the steep, snowy path, but we were happy to find that somebody had made a snow slide down one of the steepest parts of the path in front of us.
It does seem the best way to go, doesn't it?
So of course we had to try it. By the time we got back to the shuttle at Logan Pass, we were exhausted and could barely keep our eyes open long enough to take in the going to the sun views. We returned to our car and drove back towards the west entrance of the park. We stopped at Apgar Village on our way out and got our first taste of huckleberry ice cream while enjoying the views and people watching on the shore of Lake McDonald. It was a perfect way to end our day. Our third day was a lazy whitefish day, where we started with a quick 2.6-mile hike on Lion Mountain Loop. Then we explored downtown Whitefish, had pie and drinks from Lula's Cafe, and attempted to paddleboard at City Beach in Whitefish. When we found City Beach more crowded and paddleboarding more expensive than in Glacier, we decided to return to our spot at Apgar Village, after a minor mishap with a forgotten phone. Once in Apgar, we rented paddleboards for $15 an hour and had fun balancing on the freezing water and taking in the breathtaking mountain views. After paddleboarding, we took the opportunity to go for a quick swim in Lake McDonald. Of course, we had to grab another huckleberry ice cream before returning home for the night. Our Tuesday morning started especially early because we had to make it all the way across the Going to the Sun Road, out of the park, and back in for our next hike. After re-entering the park in the mini glacier area, we hit an unexpected traffic jam, and there on the side of the road we saw our very first grizzly bear of the trip.
Oh my god, it's adorable.
We spent a few moments admiring him from behind closed windows, and then respectfully went on our way.
Alright, bye-bye, Grizz.
That's so cute.
Our hike that day was to the Glacier overlook. It was by far our most difficult hike, at 7.2 miles out and back along a narrow, steep, crowded, sunny, and hot path. The views on the way up definitely made it worth our effort. The last mile and a half of the trail to the glacier overlook was blocked by snow, but we enjoyed cooling off in the ice and the waterfalls, overlooking the glacial blue alpine lake, and eating some hard-earned sandwiches. The hike back down was much easier, and we rewarded ourselves with more huckleberry ice cream at Apgar Village before heading home for the night. We left early on Wednesday morning to begin our longest drive, from Whitefish to West Yellowstone. We arrived to the Yellowstone National Park West entrance in the mid-afternoon and started heading south around the South Loop. We were able to check out the Fountain Paint Pot Trail and Grand Prismatic Spring before heading to Old Faithful for an early dinner. We arrived to the Old Faithful parking lot right as the geyser went off, so we spent the next 80 minutes or so eating dinner in the cafeteria overlooking Old Faithful, then enjoyed the final eruption from rocking chairs on the porch. The crowds had thinned tremendously by the time we were leaving, so we enjoyed a nice walk around the Old Faithful boardwalk before getting back in the car and driving to Lake Yellowstone. We stayed the night at the Lake Yellowstone cabins, and before we went to bed, we were able to look up at the stars in one of the clearest night skies I had ever seen. The next morning, we once again got an early start, intending to get to Hayden Valley early enough to see active wildlife. Unfortunately, when we entered Hayden Valley, all we could see was fog. We decided to kill some time by doing a quick hike around Mud Volcano. But the fog had not let up by the time we'd finished, so we decided to push on. Just a little further into the valley, the fog cleared and we saw our first blurry bison off in the distance. The further we drove, the more the fog cleared, and we quickly lost count of how many bison we had seen. We saw herds of bison from far away and up close, as many surrounded the parking lots. We were even caught in a few traffic jams caused by bison walking in the middle of the road.
No? Is he not?
No, he's pulling over. He just takes his time changing lanes.
Next, we hit the canyon area of the park, where we drove and hiked to lookout points along the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. We were especially impressed by the views of the upper and lower falls. We then continued driving up the North Loop to the tower area of the park, where we hiked along a sunny wildflower-filled path to have a picnic lunch at Lost Lake. We then continued on our drive around the North Loop, stopping to see some beautiful sights and our second grizzly bear of the trip. Our final stop was at the Mammoth Hot Springs to look at the famous hot spring terraces. While in Mammoth Village, we found our first elk, lounging around in the shade of the buildings. We then completed the North Loop and drove back to West Yellowstone. Our accommodations that night were at Hibernation Station cabins in West Yellowstone, just a few minutes from the park entrance. We checked in, then headed off to dinner and our very first rodeo. The rodeo was called the West Yellowstone Rodeo, and although small, was a great first experience for all of us. We watched bull riding, bronco riding, barrel racing, calf roping, and even an amusing children's competition. The BYOB policy made it a perfect way to spend our evening. The next day was Friday and our last full adventure day. As usual, we got an early start and drove south to the Grand Tetons, cutting through Yellowstone one more time. Once we got to the Tetons, we were immediately in awe of the powerful mountain views. We drove to Jenny Lake and found a spot away from the crowds to have a picnic lunch on the shore of the lake. We then went on one of our best hikes, a 2-mile trip to Moose Pond, where we finally got an amazing glimpse of a big bull moose snacking in the pond. On this hike, we also ran into 2 more grizzly bears, one of which was wandering toward us on the path on the way back. causing us to use some of our bear safety skills. After our hike, we finished our Grand Tetons trip with a dip in the chilly Jenny Lake. Then we started on our long drive back. We got the opportunity to drive the majority of the way back through Idaho, marking that state off of our lists. Our cabins that night were in Cameron, Montana, at the Blue Moon Saloon. We were able to grab a drink and a bite to eat at their bar, then watch our last sunset over the mountains at the back of the property. It was a great way to say goodbye to Montana. On Saturday morning, we made the hour drive back to Bozeman Airport, where we said goodbye to Edie and Gareth, as well as to the beautiful mountain views. Montana was never on my radar, but after this trip, I would highly recommend it to everyone. As a group, our favorite park was Glacier, but we were able to see the most wildlife and cool natural landscapes in Yellowstone. Even after all the stress and changes in the planning stage, this trip turned out to be one of the most successful yet, and I can't wait to see where our friendship takes us next.